Latsat kundalom gokule vrajamanam Namam Iswaran Sajit Anandarupam Latsat Kundalom Gokule Rajamanam Latsat Yasorabhiyolukadhavaham Bharam smitayantato vidyatya gopya Yasorabhiyolukadhavaham Bharam smitayantato vidyatya gopya Udam tamur netra yugvam rijantam karam boja yudmena satakti netram karam boja yudmena Mohosvasa kampatir kanta kanta Stitai ghavodhamodharam bhaktivaram Hirik svasali labhya ananda kunde Swagoshamemayantam upayuñjataḥ Entadiye sitar jaisu bhaktair sitartvam Puna premastam satyathavriti vandhe Puna premastam Bharam devam bhukshanam bhukshana vinva Nacham vrindeham sare sarabhiha Iram teva purnata gopala bhalam Saram hemanyasta virastam kimanyai Saram Iram teko kamboja ananta nirlai Vitam kundalai snigdha raktaisya gopya Muhushumbitam bhimba haktam dharam he Bhanastavirastam alam lakshya labdhai Namo devo dhamodharananta Viṣṇu Prasira prabho dukkha jalagnimagnam Prasira prabho dukkha jalagnimagnam Kripadristi vishyati dhinavatanu Griham demidamoktavyam akṣasya drishyai Griham demidamam ajam akṣasya Kuver amatyo bandham bhuktai vyadvad Dvajati mochito bhakti bhakto krito cha. Dvayam mochito bhakti. And tata prema bhaktim svakham priyachya. Namaksha graham isti namodareha. Namaste tu dhamne spura dipti dhamne dhadidyo rayata vishvasya dhamne dhadidyo rayata vishvasya Namoradikaya tvadhyaya prihaya Namo natalhilaya devaya tubhyam Ekaya ditaya Namo natalhilaya devaya tubhyam Namoradikaya tvadhyaya prihaya Namo natalhilaya devaya tubhyam Namo natalhilaya devaya tubhyam Namam Viṣṇu Satya Ananda Rūpam Latsat Kokul He Vrajamanam Namam Viṣṇu Satya Ananda Rūpam Latsat Kokul He Vrajamanam Namam Viṣṇu Satya Ananda Rūpam Latsat Kokul He Vrajamanam Under Rupam Hey Asorabi Olukha Dhavam Bharam Bharam Smritayat Yatyato Dritya Gopya Asorabi Olukha Dhavam Bharam Smritayat Asorabi Olukha Dhavam Bharam Bharam Smritayat Dritya Gopya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Bolo Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Hey Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Nitai Gaur Hey, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hey, Krishna Krishna, Nitya-Gaur. Hey, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Nitya-Gaur. Hey, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Diva. All glories to the holy name. All glories to the holy name. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Nitya-Gaur. Hey, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Nitya-Gaur. Nitya-Gaur, Hare Bham, Hare Bham, Hare Bham. Hey, Nitya, go to Premanande. Nitya-Gaur, Hare Bham, Hare Bham, Hare Bham. Hey, Hare Bham. Jaya Radha Dhamurara, Radha Dhamurara, ādiṣṭaṁ. Hey, Sri Radha Dhamurara, Radha Dhamurara, ādiṣṭaṁ. Jaya Kishore Kishore, Kishore Kishore, Kishore Kishore, Jaya Kishore Kishore. Hey, Jaya Kishore Kishore, Kishore Kishore, Kishore Kishore, Jaya Kishore Kishore. Hey, Jaya Radhe Jaya, Radhe Jaya, Radhe Jaya, śivenādhokṣajena. Whoa! And Nitya-Gaur, Hare Bham, Hare Bham, Hare Bham, Hare Bham. Hey! And Nitya-Gaur, Hare Bham, Hare Bham, Hare Bham, Hare Bham, Hare Bham, Hare Bham, Hare Bham. Nitya-Gaur, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Hey! Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Sisi Radha Damodar Ki Jai.
The Supreme Controller who possesses an eternal form of blissful knowledge, who is glistening, earring, and swinging to and fro, who manifested himself in the world, who stole the others, who always kept aiming from rappers who stole them, and who made people jump up and man who treated freedom and so, who was ultimately caught to that same way. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam.
On seeing his mother's whipping stick, he cried and rubbed his eyes again and again with his two lotus hands. His eyes were fearful and his breathing quick. When his mother Śrīla bound his belly with ropes, he shivered and prayed in his form like this ship. To this day, Sri Damodar, who was bound with his devotees on upayuñjataḥ and humble obeisances.
Those super excellent pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna's gave the renowned inhabitants of Gokul pools of ecstasy. The devotees who attracted only to his majestic aspects on the one hand, the Lord beyond the hills, and conquered and prolonged the pure of devotion to the Supreme Lord Damodar by obeisances hundreds and hundreds of times.
O Lord, although you are able to give all kinds of benedictions, I do not pray to you for liberation, nor eternal life in Vaikuntha, nor any other boon. My only prayer is that your childhood pastimes may constantly appear in my mind. O Lord, I do not even want to know your feature as Paramattma. I simply wish that your childhood pastimes may ever be enacted in my heart.
O Lord, the cheeks of your blackish lotus face, which is encircled by locks of curling hair, have become reddened like bimba fruit due to Mother Yashoda's kisses. What more can I describe than this? Millions of opulences are of no use to me, but may this vision constantly remain in my mind.
O unlimited Viṣṇu, O Master, O Lord, be pleased upon me. I am drowning in an ocean of sorrow and almost like a dead man. Please shower the universe on me, uplift me and protect me with nectarian vision.
O Lord Damodar, in your form as a baby, Mother Yasoda bound you to a grinding stone with rope for tying cows. She then freed the sons of Kudera, Griva, and Kabar, who were cursed to stand as trees, and you gave them a chance to become your devotees. Please bless me in this same way. I have no desire for liberation into your effulgence.
O Lord, the entire universe was created by Lord Brahma, who was born from your abdomen, which was bound with rope by Mother Yasoda. To this rope I offer my humble obeisances. I offer my obeisances to your most beloved Radharani and to your unlimited pastime. Sri Radha Damodar Ki Jai.
Madhava Jai
Radha Madhava Kunjamihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivarandari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasona Nandana Ranjana Ranjana Yasona Nandana Ranjana Ranjana Ramana Tera Manachari Ramana Tera Manachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivarandari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Jasananana Rajajana Ranjana Jasananana Rajajana Ranjana Ramana Tera Manachari Ramana Tera Manachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Ramadava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Ramadava
Swami Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya, His Divine Grace Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. Raj Granta Srimad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Damodar ki jai. Shri Shri Kishore Kishori ki jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Thai Go Premanandi. Glories to the assembled devotees. Glories to the assembled devotees. Glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Glories to Guru and Gauranga. So, continuation with little discussion on japa. We've been every day trying to see what we can reveal in the treasure house of the holy name. It's a treasure. It's an unlimited treasure. And the thing about this treasure is then once you start spending it, it increases. In other words, when you spend it or you use it, give it or use it, either way, it increases. What thing in the material world increases when you use it? Maybe a disease. That's about it. That's about all I can think of. So spiritually, the holy name is always fresh and always increasing. So Śrīla Sanatana Gosvāmī explains that there are 6 points or tips that he gives for what we say good japa. And one thing he says is mauna. Mauna means silence. Of the 26 qualities that are mentioned of a Vaishnava, the Vaishnava has 26 qualities. One of the last ones are silent. What does silent mean? Silent means silent materially. No material nonsense or talk. And talk only of spiritual topics, things related to Krishna and Krishna service, like that. So, if the mind is engaged in useless and nonsensical talks throughout the day, it will also affect our ability to chant the holy name and when it's time to chant. In the scriptures it's mentioned that Atasi Krishna namari nabravet drayam indriya sevamukehi jivado. Jivado means tongue. Swayameva sparatada. That one cannot reach to the transcendental level, but one can approach the transcendental level through using the tongue or chanting the holy names of the Lord, like that. So when the tongue is engaged in transcendental activities, 2 things, vibrating and eating. Eating only Krishna Prasad, food offered to the Lord with devotion and accepted as the mercy of the Lord. And only vibrating those sounds which are beneficial, as it's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, 17th chapter. Krishna gives the austerities of speech, and he says to speak truthfully, beneficially, avoid speech that offends, regularly recite scripture to back up what one says. In other words, to give authority to one's talk. If one just talks about what's on their mind, who cares? The mind is just going everywhere anyway. The mind can skirt the universe and come back in a few seconds and gather so much garbage, and then we think, oh, it's so nice. It's like garbage collecting, collecting garbage. But therefore one should speak only truthfully, beneficially, and about Krishna consciousness. So you might also say, well, yes, I have a job, I work in this material world, my associates are non-devotees, And therefore we have to converse in order to carry on the business of the work. That's what we say permissible within the certain range of permissibility. It means that it should be done just as what's necessary, and that's all. Silence sort of helps to control the mind, or helps to go deeper. So one of the qualities of a Vaishnava is thoughtfulness, to be thoughtful, or to be grave. Gravity is another quality of the mind, where one is thinking about the goal of life, about Krishna consciousness activities, about Krishna. And then that means one is starting to go deeper into the process of devotional life. So thoughtfulness is there. In this world, everyone likes to speak. We have so many technological gadgets that just broadcast sound. And sometimes the sound is so loud and so offensive that it's like being killed. Worse than being killed sometimes. So therefore one should be very conscious, this is the word, of the process of speak, and speak truthfully, beneficially, and avoid speech that offends. One should speak sweetly when it's required, and speak strongly when it's required. Strongly means one should speak on the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and back it up with spiritual or scriptural evidence like that. And by practicing proper speech, then one can practice chanting with more effectiveness. In other words, the holy name will be more easier to chant. Srila Madhavendra Puri would never like to travel with anyone, because that way he could remain silent and think of Krishna and chant the holy names. Because he would think, if I have to be with somebody, then we talk. So sometimes they say in the material world, talk is cheap. And it's not only cheap, it's dangerous. It's most dangerous to one's spiritual life. Sometimes we used to say, and you remember the old days of Krishna consciousness, the tongue can take you to Krishna or it can take you to hell. That's true. So one should be, what we say, very conscious and cautious to speak only what is necessary and use one's speech to... And Prabhupada makes a very interesting point. Actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, one can control the process of speaking when one regularly speaks about Krishna. Now, this is a very philosophical point, that this process of speaking becomes controlled when one learns to regularly speak about Krishna. And then the mind becomes adept to speaking about Krishna and Krishna consciousness activities, and will naturally not gravitate to these mundane things. So we can't avoid speaking, but therefore we're not Moni Babas. They have these Babas in India, they carry signs around with them, or chalkboards or signs. It says, please give 2 chapatis. Now. And Prabhupada says, that's not Moni, they're still speaking. The mind is talking, they're writing, right? So that is another form of speech. They call themselves Moni Babas. There was one Baba, I forgot his name. He left the world, and he was silent for 25 years. So Prabhupada said, that's good, because they have nothing to say anyway. So it's better to keep quiet. This person was trying to glorify this person. Prabhupada said, that's very good. Usually they have nothing to say, so better keep quiet. So, a lot of times that's true. A lot of times that's true. So practice speaking about Krishna devotional service, and then it becomes, what we say, easier to control the mind and senses when it's time to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Okay, any questions related to that? Or about japa in general? Yes, what's your name? Peter. Hare Krishna. Hare. I asked him about that. It's His Holiness Sachinandana Maharaj, who's actually made chanting. He brought back chanting to ISKCON in the last 10 years. He started these drapa retreats first in Europe and then in America. Now he's doing kirtan retreats all over. We have 7 days of kirtans now. He's really absorbed in the holy name constantly, day and night. He writes about it. And I asked him about that. He said there's a philosophical meaning to that particular thing, that in order to approach Krishna, we have to approach Krishna through Radharani also. So, therefore, by emphasizing our approach with Radharani, we can also access the mercy of Krishna. But then he also says that, practically speaking, this is not philosophic, but practically, when you catch the first word, then it's easier to catch the rest of the sound. Usually, just like now, here's an experiment. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So think back, what word did you catch me on? Were you right there at the first Hare when I said that? No, usually not. Sometimes it takes you to the last Hare at the end. Sometimes the mind is saying, oh, there's something to do here. So it takes a little while to get up to speed, as they say. So it's like that. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. It's just the nature of the mind, that's all. The nature of the uncontrolled mind. And so we definitely need to practice hearing, and therefore this is one way to what we say. Now, if it doesn't work for you, that's okay. But it seems to work for most people. And he's been emphasizing that, and I've tried it. This morning I really tried it more than any time, and I found it really, really helpful today, more than any day. Sometimes the mind is more easier to connect with the holy name, and sometimes the mind is more wild. It's just the way it is. It's the mind or it's the modes of material nature. So sometimes we find variations in our ability to chant. So therefore, this morning I found it a little bit more difficult, so by emphasizing the Hare, I found it easier to chant. Or more easier to hear, like that. But it's not a Kali Yuga thing. No, it's actually... The process of devotional service is the process of taking the knowledge given by Krishna and the Acharyas and realizing that knowledge, and through realization coming up with what we say more newer and ideas on the process of devotional service that is not against the principles, but as realizations that come by way of practice. It's not like all the knowledge has been given, but the realizations come by way of practice. So even in realizations, we get more knowledge from the realizations. So it's not like we've reached the end of all knowledge and everything is there. The practice has been given. That cannot be changed. But mahajano yena katasapanta, the scriptures say that the truth of all religious scriptures are hidden in the hearts of the self-realized soul. So those who are self-realized, they can tell you what is truth, because they have realized the truth through practice like that. So devotees get realizations. We should share our realizations with others. But they have to be, what's the difference between a realization and just the mind's speculation? It has to be in line with Shastra and Guru and Sadhu. It shouldn't be different or outside of that, like that. Okay, anything else on japa before we begin class? Yes, Mataji?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
When you were talking about silence, I was thinking that even when I'm not speaking, it feels as if like I'm speaking inside.
In the mind.
Yeah, like
That
constantly.
little mouse is going. Even when you're chanting. Give me, give me, give me, give me. Ooh. It's just like it 24/7. It's flying high, Even when you're sleeping, it's going, but you can't hear it. So that's the nature of the mind. So, yeah. It'll stop. It'll slow down as your mind becomes more and more, what we say, spiritualized. And then it becomes easier, where it's just the sound of spiritual sound vibrations. Right now, just turn down the volume, shut it off, and unplug it. Don't listen to it. That's what Prabhupada talks about in controlling the mind, learning how to neglect these, what we say, petitions, desires of the rattling mind. You just have to learn how to ignore it. If you understand you're not the mind, then you also understand what's coming from the mind is not necessarily coming from you or coming from what is beneficial. You have to learn to separate your mind from yourself and see the difference. How do you do that? By discriminating based on Shastra and Guru. And then there's practical common sense too. We also have to use practical common sense. Prabhupada said devotional service is common sense. That's also there. So learning how to bring in the proper thoughts at the same time pushing out all these other things. And it's just the mind wanting certain things, satisfaction or attention, like that. Especially attention. When you start chanting, it wants attention. Yes, Richard? You can't help looking at things. You should not be looking at them in the wrong way.
So then, when we are looking at something in the wrong way, or, according to our philosophy, it appears, you're wondering, okay, where's this behavior coming from in relationship to Krishna? Or these thought processes.
Well, it's either in relationship to Krishna or not in relationship to Krishna. Like, if you see something and you don't see it connected to the source, that's material. If you see it connected to the source, that's spiritual. And so, just connect everything to Krishna, because everything is connected to Krishna anyway. Everything in this material world, bhumir apanalobayu, kamanam bude vacha, ahankar ityam me, bina prakriti astada. Krishna says, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, they're all my separated energies. What is the next verse? Aparayam vidi param jiva bhuta mahabhalo yayedam daryate jagat. But there's another energy which makes up the spiritual energy, which includes all living beings. So there's two energies. They're both Krishna's energy, the spiritual and the material. So seeing things separate from Krishna means to see things materially. Seeing things connected to Krishna means to see things spiritual. How do you connect things to Krishna? Either by making the mental connection that this is Krishna's energy, it's working under Krishna's direction, or you take that energy and you engage it in Krishna's service, and that is devotional service. And so, there's nothing outside of Krishna. Krishna says in the Bhagavatam, he doesn't speak many verses in the Bhagavatam, but the chapter sloki verses, he says, before the creation I existed. Before the creation only I exist. During the manifestation it is I that exists, and after the annihilation it is I that remains. So Krishna is everything. But Krishna is divided into two understandings, his spiritual energy and his material energy. But for Krishna there's nothing material, everything is spiritual. We see materially, he doesn't. He sees everything as his energies, but they're working differently, that's all. It's like an electrician can employ the electricity to work in different ways according to the receptacle that it's connected to. Same electricity, but it's heating, or it's cooling, or it's giving power. It's doing different things, but it's all the same energy. So the material energy is also Krishna's energy, but it works in a different way, that's all.
Selfish?
No, it's not a good one. It means cut off. Material means cut off from. Selfish? No. I don't think that's a good analogy for the word material. Selfish means you can see this is Krishna's material energy. You can see it like that. But selfish means to use it for your own self-interest. Then it's selfish. It doesn't make the energy selfish. The energy is not selfish. It's the use of it. And that's the person, not the energy. That's the living being who becomes selfish. The energy is never selfish. This energy is actually beneficial in the sense that it's helping us to realize Krishna by giving us difficulty. There's the uncle, there's the father. The father is loving, the uncle, he's difficult. He might chastise you. And you run to your father for protection from the nasty uncle. So the material energy is kicking us, so we run to Krishna for shelter. And therefore this energy is good. When we get tired of being kicked, then we run to Krishna. And then we get away, then Krishna says, oh, it's okay, and then you go back and get kicked again. We get kicked over and over. So it's the energy is beneficial because it's considered Maya, and Maya is Krishna's energy. And she's a pure devotee. Sisti, stisti, palaya, sadaveka, chayeva, vivati durga, ichana rupa, upayuñjataḥ sa, govindam, maripurusham, tamaham bhajanmi. So, material energy is called chaya. The material energy is called chaya. Chaya means shadow. So this energy is a reflection of the reality. In the spiritual world, there's also forms and activities and buildings and roads and trees and so many things. But that's real. Here, what you see is a reflection of the reality. So this energy is existing, but it's simply a reflection. And you can't enjoy the reflection. You can enjoy only the reality. So trying to enjoy the reflection means to get kicked. That's all. There's no enjoyment here. And we'll hear it from this verse. This verse is really nice. I'm going to get to the verse because it's really a good verse. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 4, Chapter 31. Narada's instructs the Pracetās, verse 6. Ādiṣṭaṁ bhagavatā śivenādhokṣajena gṛheṣu prasaktānāṁ prāyaśaḥ prabho. Ādiṣṭaṁ bhagavatā śivenādhokṣajena gṛheṣu prasaktānāṁ prāyaśaḥ prabho. Ādiṣṭaṁ bhagavatā śivenādhokṣajena gṛheṣu prasaktānāṁ prāyaśaḥ prabho. Ladies. Yet, what ādiṣṭaṁ was instructed, bhagavatā, by the exalted personality, Śivena, Lord Śiva, ādhoṣajena, by Lord Viṣṇu, cha, also, tat, that, grīheṣu, to family affairs, prasaktānāṁ, by us who were too much attached, prayaśaḥ, almost, kṣapitaṁ, forgotten, prabho, O Master. Translation: O Master, may we inform you that because of our being overly attached to family affairs, we almost forgot the instructions we received from Lord Śiva and Lord Viṣṇu. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Remaining in family life is a kind of concession for sense enjoyment. One should know that sense enjoyment is not required, but one has to accept sense enjoyment in as much as one has to live. As confirmed in Srimad-Bhāgavatam 1.2.10, kāmasya nendriya-prītiḥ. One has to become a Goswami and control his senses. One should not simply use his senses for sense gratification. Rather, the senses should be employed just as much as required for maintaining the body and soul together. Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī recommends anāsaktasya viṣayān yathārham upayuñjataḥ. One should not be attached to sense objects, but one should accept sense enjoyment as much as required, no more. If one wishes to enjoy the senses more than require, he becomes attached to family life, which means bondage. All the Pracetās admitted their fault in remaining in household life. Om agyantimirandasya gnānajana salakaya chaksu unmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave namaha Shri Chaitanya manobhistam staptitam yena bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swam Padantikam. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, the Pracetās are feeling a little bit unhappy because they practically forgot the instructions given by Lord Viṣṇu coming from Lord Śiva. They became too much attached to their family situation. So, family life, as mentioned here, is a kind of concession for sense enjoyment. Whereas the living entity has an eternal loving relationship with God, which is eternal and always enjoyable. When the living entity comes to the material world, the living entity looks for happiness in material things because one has a material body. So this material body requires some satisfaction. So then there's eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, the 4 activities of the material body. So regulating these things allows one to practice devotional service in such a way that one can move forward on the path back home, back to Godhead. So regulation is the key word that we're trying to emphasize here. So in every ashram, the word ashram means place of spiritual cultivation. So there are 4 ashrams, brahmacharya, and we also have the counterpart, brahmacharini. We have what is called grihasta, we have vanaprastha, and sannyas. These 4 ashrams are places of spiritual cultivation, and one must enter into one of the ashrams and practice devotional service according to the principles given in that ashram. Following one's ashram means following the process of devotional service. So there is a slight difference between rules, regulations, and requirements for each of the ashrams. 3 of the ashrams, there's no sexual activity allowed. And that is in brahmachari, brahmacharini, in vanaprastha, and in sannyas. In grihasta ashram, there is a concession for sex life, which means allowed to engage in that activity, but only for the procreation of children, to bring up children in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there's no need for such activities. When Prabhupada was explaining these principles back in the early days of the Krishna conscious movement, one very senior devotee, in fact it was the first devotee who met Prabhupada, and that was His Grace Hayagriva Prabhu, who was the first person to actually see Prabhupada in America, New York actually, at least in the Hare Krishna movement. And Prabhupada was talking about, sex life has to be regulated in marriage for once a month. And only at the time when conception is the most opportune time. And then when conception is given, then that is stopped for 1 year until the child is born, and then 6 months after the child is born. And then one can engage again, and for the same reason, to bring about Krishna consciousness children. So when Hayagriva heard Prabhupada's explanation, he said, "What's once a month? Well, what's the use?" Prabhupada said, "Very good boy, you have understood." What's the use, even once a month? It's concessionary. If one can do without it, then it's easier, or we might say more direct, to follow the process of Krishna consciousness. one can focus all their time and energy and attention on the process of devotional service. But for most people in Kali Yuga, especially in this age, grihastha ashram is a requirement. So in that grihastha ashram, one has to follow these rules and regulations. It's not that a grihastha is less than other ashrams, it's just that there is concessions for sense enjoyment, but in a regulated way. And that's the key. It has to be done in a regulated way. Because without regulated way, then one becomes what we say grihamedi. We have the example in the Shastras of Priyavrata Maharaj. Now, Priyavrata Maharaj was the son of King Uttanapada, whose father was Swayambhuva Manu. He was the brother of King Uttanapada, and their father was Swayambhuva Manu. There was a problem in the universe in that there was no one to do the work of the sun god. The sun god has a very responsible activity. He has to maintain the revolution of the sun accordingly. If you could actually see it, and there are devotees who have actually seen that if you look up in the sun, there's a person who's riding on the chariot who's directing the movements of the sun. He's a very golden, but we can't see that with these eyes. Some people can actually see it. There are people who worship the sun god, and the sun god reveals himself to them. So there's a person who's in charge of maintaining the sun's activities within the universe. There was nobody to do the work. Priyavrata had taken up lifetime of brahmachari life. He said, I'm not getting married. I'm going to stay in brahmachari and finish my life in devotional service that way. Lord Brahma searched along with Swayambhuva Manu to find someone who was qualified to do the work. Nobody could find. The only one who was qualified was Priyavrata. He was the only one. So Swayambhuva Manu pleaded with his son, please take up the work. He said, no way, I'm not going to do that, because to do this service you have to be in the grihastha ashram. You have to be married. I don't want to get married. I want to remain brahmachari. He couldn't dissuade his son, so Narada Muni came and also spoke to him. He couldn't do it either. He was fixed. I'm going to remain brahmachari. Finally, they said, we got to use some stronger methods to get this person to change. So they called Lord Brahma himself, the father of Narada, the guru of Narada, and the CEO of the universe. Finally, he came and he approached, and he spoke with him very convincingly and said, don't worry, when you do your work, you can also get detached from household life from that and go back to brahmacharya afterwards. Finally, he realized the Lord is actually asking me to do this service. He got married. And he did the work, he did the service so expertly that everyone was saying, wow, he's as good as any sun god. He did the service so expertly. But he got married to a very beautiful and qualified wife. And she was the perfection of personal service. We can speak about this too also. That in household life, if the wife serves the husband very nicely, then the marriage works nicely. A marriage breaks down when the women don't understand the men. Haribo. I know you don't like that one, but anyway, that's Shastra. If the woman serves the husband nicely, the husband is so inclined to give himself to the wife. She has to use her charm, her sweetness, her service, and her abilities to capture him. And when she does, then he will, what we say, do whatever he can to please her. That's household life. Nowadays it just doesn't work, does it? There's too many things to do. And therefore women are doing so many things, not taking care of their husbands properly, right? And the husbands are also maybe not as good as, the ideal husband, so it's sometimes a little difficult. for women to come to that standard. And this is a whole different topic, and I won't get into it in detail because it's actually a seminar, and there's a lot of discussion on this. But the point is made that she served him so nicely that he became very much inclined to his wife, and he became controlled by his wife. Here's the key. You want to control men, just serve them nicely. Really, this is the way to control them. Anyway, that's another story. You control with love. Anyway, so he became somewhat like a puppet in her hands, and he became somewhat attached to his wife in a material way. And although he wanted to remain brahmachari his whole life, even in grihastha life, he was slipping from the standard. And it was noted. It was noted not only by himself, by others. And it said that he had to be, always say, hey, like Priyavrat, you're becoming henpecked. You're getting overly attached to your wife. It's not so nice. And it's also, the shun is maybe a little shaking a little bit every once in a while. I'm just adding that in there anyway. Little embellishment, which are good for pastimes. But the point was, it was coming out in his service too. And he was noting it. So it was a problem. So finally he became a little sober, understood the problem, corrected it, and then went on with his service. And then later on, of course, he produced a child, and that was King Agnidra. His son was Agnidra, and Agnidra was really henpecked. Oh, he was really controlled by his wife. That's a whole other story anyway. Read the 5th canto. 5th canto, right, I forgot what chapter that is. That's the very beginning. First chapters. We're getting right into it. Priyavrat, yeah, the next chapter. I'm previewing the up-and-coming suspense, which is really nice. So anyway, here's an example of, although a person may get into household life and as a duty, one can slip from the duty and fall into what we say a mood of enjoyment or a mood of over-detachment. Over-detachment means you don't take care of your wife nicely, or the wife doesn't serve the husband nicely because they're afraid of getting attached to each other. So there's this balance. We see marriages break up because either too much sense gratification or not enough developing the relationship based on religious principles. There's a medium to find that. And the rules and regulations teach us how to act in every situation and how to develop that. So here's an example here that there's a danger in household life. What is that danger? The danger is one can start to use the grihastha ashram for sense enjoyment. And then one loses their enthusiasm for devotional service. Because when one goes in that way, then Krishna consciousness becomes a lot more difficult. And so, I had another point. This was a good point. And the other aspect of that is that I forgot what I was going to say. It was really good too. Anyway, Kali Yuga, Manda Sumanda Mateo Manya Bhagya Padrita. Memory gets shortened. Anyway, in that, what we say. Okay. But there's the danger in brahmachari life too, and brahmacharini life, is that one's mind is not stable in devotional service and one is looking around towards sense gratification. Krishna talks about that in Bhagavad Gita, that one may be externally making a show of devotional service, but internally still thinking about sense enjoyment. Krishna calls that person a pretender. A pretender. That they're wearing the colors but acting in a different way. So therefore there's a danger there also too. That's why grihasta ashram is considered the safe boat to cross the ocean of material, because one focuses their attention on one's wife or husband and follows the principles and develops detachment in ashram, as opposed to one who is not following it, but it's still pretending to be renounced. So, therefore, there's the benefit of grihasta ashram. But the pitfall of grihasta ashram is that one can get overly attached to that situation, get comfortable, and get, what we say, enamored by sensual opportunities. That's brought out in the 7th canto. Prahlad Maharaj describes that in very detail when he's preaching to his schoolmates about, how a householder is enamored by all the activities and amenities of household life, and then becomes illusioned by those things and starts to think in terms of janasamoham yamaham mameti, that this is mine and this is I. This is the danger of household life, is that you start thinking, this is my wife, this is my husband, this is my property, this is my money, this is my children, this is my bank balance, I and mine. Janasamoham moha. Moha means illusion. Nothing belongs to us. We are using it, and it has a purpose in our life, but the proprietor of everything is the Supreme Lord. Krishna owns everything. Everything belongs to Krishna. So, the Pracetās, somehow or other, they were saying, we stayed in household life too long, we got enamored, we forgot the instructions of Lord Śiva, who gave them instructions to become detached from this whole thing. And now you're coming along, Narada Muni, and you're reminding us what it is. Sometimes it's like that. The spiritual master will give you an instruction, and in due course of time, we may not either follow it perfectly or follow it wrongly, half-heartedly, and then someone else will come along and remind us in one way or the other. So that's mercy. That's actually Krishna coming through that other person to remind us about the importance of following our ashram properly. But it says also here that ultimately one has to leave that ashram and, what we say, move on to renunciation. So how grihasta ashram is not a permanent thing. We see in the material world, people die in that ashram. If you die married, then who do you remember? Your wife, your husband, your children. That's the last thought of your mind. The 4th canto describes that. You probably just read that. How the pitiful householder, he's dying and he's still making plans, telling his wife what she should do after he goes, right? Make sure you pay the rent, so many other things. He's still giving instructions, but he's not going to be around. So that's attachment. He's still trying to manage things, still trying to live his way through, the fact that he's going, but he still wants to be around. Can't face the fact. So there's a danger in that. So one has to move out of that gradually and then ultimately be detached from that. Therefore, in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati talks about first grihasta, vanaprastha life, and then sannyas. And there's 4 stages of sannyas. Kutichak, Bahudak, Pariva, Chakacharya, Paramahansa. Kutichak means one still living in the village, but the wife still brings food to they live separately, but she brings him food, cooks his meals. That's called Kutichak. There's no physical contact at that time. Bahudak, then he's still living in the village, but she no longer associates with him. He no longer associates with her. And then Pravijrakacharya means he goes out and starts to preach and travel. And then Paramahansa says that when preaching becomes mature and perfect, and then one can sit down and do nirjan bhajan, one can absorb themselves in thoughts of Krishna and ultimately leave the world in that consciousness and attain, pure devotional service at that stage. So, if you understand Krishna consciousness, you understand that there is a systematic process to gradually move forward to the goal of life. You can't charge the gates of heaven, as they say. The gates of the spiritual world have handles on the inside, not on the outside. It means you have to be let in. You can't open it from your side. So therefore, we'll become qualified to be let in when we follow the process of devotional service. So grihastha life is very important, and it's a good opportunity to develop detachment and ultimately go back home, back to Godhead. But there's a danger. There's a danger in all ashrams, but especially in grihastha life, there's a lot of dangers. Okay, any questions? Yes, Asraya Prabhu. Here's a detached householder who will ask a question.
Thank you for your blessings,
Maharaj. That was the intention.
Thank you, Maharaj. Again. While there are the religious principles that are meant to be followed because it helps us to achieve gradual detachment, so there's a proper way to follow every ashram according to scriptural direction. Just my kind of experience and observation is that because we're practically animals, not even like cultured people when we come to Krishna consciousness, it's almost like a lifetime of work just to try to get into that culture as opposed to just focusing on whatever way we can get engaged in devotional service. So for, this kind of Kali Yuga person, should we just try our best to understand the principles of that and extract that and utilize it, for our benefit, or is it really important to come to the stage of that form of ashram?
Your question can be answered from different perspectives. The ideal perspective is that we need community. And community helps to fortify our practice of devotional service when we get support from others who are practicing the same thing. And that's why Prabhupada wanted these communities so devotees can live together and share resources and also share labor and also share realizations on how to live. So that's the ideal situation. But as far as the practice itself, one has to cultivate the mood of detachment. And how do you do that? By seeing everything in this material world as simply two ways. You can either see it as something you can use in devotional service or something that should be avoided. If you can't use it in devotional service, it should be avoided. So in relationship to our grihat, there's responsibilities. But our happiness is not in the grihastha ashram. Our happiness is in devotional service, which means chanting, hearing, associating with devotees, kirtan, prasadam, philosophy, going to holy places, like that. There's where we find spiritual enthusiasm and joy. Not in managing your household. If you manage your household in a Krishna-conscious way, then it becomes nice. But the idea is, as Prabhupada says here, if one wishes to enjoy the senses more than required, that's the point. He mentions over and over. Sense satisfaction is required, but not more. So then there you have to see what you need to keep body and soul together and not more. If you go beyond that, then you fall into the mood of what we say you fall into the mode of passion. If you go under that, then you can't properly execute your spiritual life. So you have to find that balance. So, as far as living, Prabhupada said, live simply. Now, how do you live simply in this society? It's very difficult because there's so many challenges and so many apparent necessities and requirements. But Prabhupada said, live simply. So he wanted these farm communities where grihastas, farm communities are for grihastas. The brahmacharis should be traveling and preaching. The sannyasis should be doing the same thing. For the brahmacharis to stay in the temples all day, they'll fall into maya, no doubt. And for the grihastas, unless they're really maintaining their griha and doing devotional service, they start looking towards other things for happiness, like going to the movies or watching television or just surfing the net or something. They get bored. So we have to somehow or other understand what we need to do, like that. But in a philosophical way, we should see that everything ultimately is meant for Krishna's service, like that. We take lessons from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was the ideal grihasta. He had a wife and 10 children. But still, he was so Krishna conscious that he never gave much time to his family affairs. But still the family was satisfied because in that time it was quality. There was always quality time with the family. But he spent most of his time writing books or doing his services like that. So that's, if a wife is engaged in devotional service, if the husband's engaged in devotional service, Prabhupada said the house is Vaikuntha. Then Lakshmi is personally present there. But if one of them wants, material enjoyment, then the whole thing becomes difficult for both, Read that book, 4 Goals of Family Life, by Jagannath Desishwara. It is so comprehensive. It's been reviewed by many, many devotees with excellent reviews. It's an ideal book to get a little bit of a better pattern or a blueprint on how to live in grihasta life. We need support, especially in Kali Yuga. It's so difficult this age. Very difficult age. All the ashrams are challenged. That's why community makes things easier, or what we say makes things doable. Kali Yuga is such a bad age. So bad. Right? There's nothing good about this age except the holy name. So every ashram is challenged hard by the presence of Kali Yuga. Sannyasis keep money, grihastas fail to give in charity, brahmacharis are dirty, and vanaprasthas fail to go to the forest. They're city dwellers. Vanaprastha means dweller. Vana means forest. So if you can't find a forest, make one yourself. Just build a forest in your house. Put some trees, some brush, something. So these 4 defects are there, inherent in the ashrams in Kali Yuga, like that. You go into a brahmachari ashram, it looks like the Bowery, like hell. Copins all over the walls, hanging from the seatings. Stuff here, there, everywhere. Prabhupada walked into a brahmachari ashram. said, brahmachari means dirty. Prabhupada said, revolutionary clean. So brahmacharis, you should clean that ashram every day. Wash the floors, clean the windows, sweep, throw things out. Every day, keep that place so spick and span, and you won't have any bugs, and you won't have any problems. Cleanliness is godliness. For sannyasis, ask them for money, because they got a lot. For grihastas, they should also ask. They also should give in charity. And that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, yeah. Grihastas, they can't even maintain their grihasta ashram. They have to work and they can't even get by. What to speak about giving in charity. But Rūpa Gosvāmī, and Prabhupada quotes it at least 20 times in scriptures. Grihastas should give 50% of their income to the Krishna consciousness movement. 50%. And divide the other 50 in half, 25% for maintenance and 25% for savings. Like that. And that's the ideal grihasta life. But who's doing that? So, there's some adjustment because of Kali Yuga, but the more we found, I think if you read Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary on Rūpa Gosvāmī's verses in this Nectar of Instructions, he gives the ideal understanding of the rules and regulations of grihasta life. It's called Bhakti-aloka, that book. You've seen the book, Bhakti-aloka? It's a commentary on one of the principles. I think it's called Satyavritti. Sadhuvritti. Following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas means executing your rules and regulations of your ashrams. That's what it means. For the brahmacharis and sannyasis, there's one set. For the grihastas, there's another set. Rules and regulations. So follow those rules and regulations. What does Krishna say in Gita? Raga dvaisha vimuktaisthu viṣayam indriyastriyam atma viṣaya vehedatma prasadam adigaichyati. What does he say? By following the regulative principles of freedom, one can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord and be free from all attachment and aversion. So he calls rules and regulations principles of freedom. To do whatever you want means, no, you're not free. You're bound by the rules and regulations of this material world. So if you want to be free, you have to follow rules and regulations. Krishna's guidance. Take shelter under Krishna and follow those rules and regulations. Therefore, one of the ways to fall down is called niyamagraha. That means following rules and regulations just for the sake of following and not knowing why, or not following the rules and regulations and acting whimsically, or what we say, what's the other word? Whimsically or capriciously? No, I mean. There's another word. Yeah. Not following him and doing whatever you want, whenever you want. So there's two ways to break that principle. Strict following rules and regulations but not knowing why. The rules and regulations are there to teach you the goal, to help you follow the goal. That's why we have rules and regulations. But they're not the end in themselves. They're a guide, ultimately. The guide for pure devotional service. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. There's that one saying how truth has like two opposites simultaneously or something like that. I don't know exactly how it goes, but...
Chinta beta beta tattva?
No, where the truth has two opposite or opposing views, to be able to hold those views simultaneously.
The quality of a genius, that's mentioned in Nectar of Devotion, that quality of a genius, he can hold two opposing views in his mind at the same time and still be able to function. That's the quality of a genius. That's mentioned in Nectar of Devotion. It's one of the qualities of Krishna. He's genius.
On one side, it's just like, Kali Yuga, people are eating cows, and that's abominable. And then Jada and Madai, how they were so abominable. But Lord Chaitanya's mercy was just like, he forgave them.
Yeah.
How Yamaraj just fainted when he heard about it, I think.
Yeah, Jagai and Madai.
So, in that sense, with the mercy of the spiritual master only.
Mukhan karoti vachalam pangu lagite giram yat kripa tanaham bande siguru dinatarinam. Yeah. We recite that verse sometimes before Bhagavatam class every day. That Krishna's mercy is coming through the spiritual master, and with that mercy one can, what we say, do the impossible. One can do the impossible. Because it's Krishna's mercy. It's coming through Guru, that's all. Guru is the dispenser of the mercy. He's not the creator of the mercy. But like a shopkeeper, he's very generous and doesn't make the price too high. He makes the price buyable by everyone, as long as you have some eagerness. Bore suke kabogai, bore suke kabogai. Lord Nityananda is going everywhere. What is he doing? He's setting up the shopkeep of the holy name. He says, I'm a merchant. I have a product. Please come and buy. Please bring your money. What is the merchandise? The merchandise is the holy name. And what is the money? Faith. So if you have $5 worth of faith, that's what you get. If you have $50 worth of faith, that's what you get. So faith is the basis of everything. Okay, we're moving a little bit beyond the time here, so I better stop. Thank you very much. Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Tomorrow, starting at 10:30 in the morning, we'll begin a 6-part seminar on Śrīla Prabhupada. Please attend. I think you'll find it one of the most interesting seminars you have ever experienced in your life. It's all slides. And it's very interactive. Every devotee will be can get involved with speaking, asking questions, and making comments. So it's very interactive. It starts at 10:30. There's a session in the afternoon, a session in the evening, and then Sunday there's also 3 sessions. So. Kirtida, where's Kirtida? Is she still around? Oh. Yeah, it's here.